Okay, so welcome to our live lesson for today. My name is Bethan Edwards, and I am the Academic Director here at Specialist Language Courses. And today I'm going to talk about Reading C, and we're going to look at the format and the question types. So before starting, for anybody who's new to our live lessons, we have just a few tips for our session. First of all, the lesson is being recorded, so feel free to take notes or screenshots, but know that it is recorded and we will be sharing this via our YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe. You can find lots of videos and helpful hints and tips for preparing for your OET exam. Second, a little bit about how we're going to use Zoom today. We're going to use the chat function, as you've been doing already. We're using this for tasks during the class. We'll be using polls today. So when we have a poll, in order to answer the question, you need to choose the right option, and then click submit, and then we'll talk through the answers. And then at the end, we have question and answers. So if you have any questions, we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. So pop your questions in there and I'll do my best to answer them. Third, don't forget to register for our next free live lesson, which will be next week. The link will be available in the chat for you now to sign up for that. So let's get started. So Reading C. We are going to have an overview of the reading paper, focusing on Reading C in particular, especially for those who are perhaps new to your OET preparation. We're going to look at the format of Reading C, and we're going to look at texts and questions and the strategies that you can use in order to help you be successful on Reading C, Reading Part C paper. So what happens in the OET reading test? So the whole of the OET reading test, you have 1 hour altogether for the OET reading test. There are 3 parts, A, B, and C. And how will you be assessed? All questions carry the same marks. There are a total of 42 marks available in the OET reading paper. Part A will be 4 short texts, and you have a matching gap fill or short answer question tasks. Part B, you have 6 short texts with 3 option multiple choice. And part C, that we're going to talk about today, you have 2 longer texts and 4 option multiple choice questions. Part A is 15 minutes, and then part B and C is 45 minutes. So you have 1 hour in total for the reading part of OET. Now, looking particularly at Reading C, what can you expect? You will see 2 texts. Each text is approximately 750 to 850 words. So these are longer texts that you're expected to read and analyze and answer questions on. There are 16 questions in total, so 8 questions per text. Including 2 lexical reference questions for each text. We'll talk about this a little bit later today. The questions are all 4 option multiple choice questions. When you start Reading C, you will see these instructions. So you'll see that the instructions show you how many questions there are, how you need to answer each of these questions. And we can see that as parts B and C are given to you together, questions 1 to 6 are on part B, and then 7 to 14 for the first text are on the first text in Reading C. So I have a question for you. So my question is, what types of texts will you find in Reading Part C? So we're going to do a little poll here. So you can see 3 statements on the screen. What type of text will you find in Part C? Do you think it's A or B or C? So have a little think, and then I am going to launch the poll. So choose your answer on the poll, A, B, or C. So the poll should come up on your screen. Choose your answer from the poll. Okay. Okay. So you have overwhelmingly chosen C. So we can see our results here. So 75% of you have chosen answer C, and you are correct. So in reading part C, the text will be taken from academic journals or websites for medical professionals. Workplace text such as policy documents or memos you'll find in reading B, and texts used for managing patient care such as diagnostic tools are the types of text you will find in A. So when you're preparing for OET Reading C, you need to be looking at texts that are at the right context and the right level for you. So a little bit more about those texts. Texts come from journals or websites on general medical topics. They might be reporting on academic research, but they won't be too academic in nature. So this means that they may be slightly different in style to articles that you read from journals, in that for OET, they've been adapted to report on academic research and making sure that it includes reporting and explaining on a variety of views or opinions rather than concrete facts. So if you read a research report, perhaps from a journal, it may not be quite the same as what you see in OET Reading C. So let's take a look at what you can expect with the questions on Reading C. So for Reading C, in order to answer the questions, you need to make sure that you can understand longer sections of text. So you won't be looking for individual words, but it tests your ability to understand longer sections of text and to understand views, opinions, and attitude that you find in those texts. So looking at the question format, each question will have a question or a sentence stem. So this is a sentence stem, so it's the start of a question, and 4 possible answers to choose from. You need to, on the paper-based test, you need to mark the answer by coloring in the circle with a pencil. And it's important that you get this right, as this section of the reading paper is marked by a computer. So make sure that you very clearly color in the answer that you would like, your final answer. So let's look at some strategies. So the first strategy, it's advisable and it's a good idea to skim read the text quickly. Now, we need to emphasize this idea of quickly because you don't have that much time to spend on reading the whole text in detail before you answer the questions. So you really need to read through quickly to get a general idea of the topic and a general idea of the format and what the content of the text, but not a slow and detailed reading. So you'll need to practice your speed reading skills for OET Part C. It's then a good idea in the paper-based test to make sure that you number the paragraphs, as this will make it easier to navigate the text and the questions and look in the right section in order to find your answer. So let's talk about strategies and steps that you can follow in order to answer the multiple choice question. So we're going to talk through some strategies, and then we're going to do an example together, and then I'm going to ask you to do an example today. So when you look at a question, first of all, you should read the question and underline any keywords. So the keywords are those words that will help you to find the answer. You should also underline keywords in the options. So underline keywords in the options and notice the differences between these different options. Then read the paragraph carefully. Eliminate any answers that you find that are definitely incorrect. So sometimes you'll find one or two answers that perhaps you can immediately decide that they are not the right answer. Then you need to do a continuous process. You look at the options, you look at the text, look at the options, look at the text to make sure that you have chosen the right answer. So let's do an example together. So we have our paragraph and we have our question. So we need to read the question carefully. And here we want to know, why does the writer use Eve Van Corter's words? What's the reason for using her words and her quote? And then we notice the differences between the options. So in A, is she explaining the main causes of sleep deprivation? So we might have some examples of why people suffer from sleep deprivation. Is she reinforcing a view about the impact of sleep deprivation? So here we would have an opinion, and the writer has decided, perhaps the writer has presented an opinion, and then they're using Eve Van Corter's words in order to emphasize or reinforce that opinion. C is Eve Van Corter's quote used to question some research findings, so perhaps disagree or challenge these findings, or are Eve Van Corter's words used to describe challenges in research? Okay, so have a little read of what you can see on the screen, and then we're going to check the answer together. There's no need to write in the chat box this time. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. In this text and question, B is the correct answer. So let's look at why B is correct. So the writer explains the impact of sleep deprivation. So people who suffer sleep deprivation may suffer from a wide variety of other health burdens, for example, emotional distress, cognitive impairment, etc. Then we look for Eve Van Corter's words, and Eve Van Corter reinforces this view. So it supports this view. She agrees there is not a system that is that's not affected. So every system in your body is affected by sleep deprivation. So when you're preparing, you need to look at why the other options are not correct. So let's take a look. If we look at A, the writer explains the effects, not the causes of sleep deprivation. So A is not correct. The C is not correct because she mentions research, but it does not challenge or question any results. And then D, the text mentions things that go wrong, but there is no problem mentioned with the research itself. So D is not correct. Okay, so your turn. Let's go through those first two steps together, and then I'm going to ask you to find the answer. So we need to read the question carefully. We need to read the options and notice the differences. We need to read the paragraph carefully. We need to eliminate any answers which are definitely incorrect. And we also need to be careful of distractors. So distractors are options that look like they might be right, but on closer reading, they're not. And when you're doing this, you need to make sure you read the options, notice differences, and read the paragraph carefully, and do this repeatedly. So let's talk through those options. So A, the breastfeeding debate highlights the benefits of breast milk over formula milk. So this is suggesting that there are more benefits to breast milk than formula milk. B, compares the benefits of breast milk with those of formula. So the benefits of breast milk and the benefits of formula milk. C, discusses the reasons why women choose not to breastfeed. So we would expect to have reasons why and then evidence to support this. Or D, are we looking for a conclusion, a concluding statement that shows that breast milk is better? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes and I'd like you to write into the chat box. So read through the text on the screen and then in the chat box, give us your answer. Do you think it's A, B, C, or D? So make sure that you're reading this quite carefully. Remember, A, perhaps it suggests that there are more benefits to breast milk than formula. B is comparing the benefits of both. C is reasons why women chose not to breastfeed. And D, we're looking for a conclusion. Okay. So there is, okay, so people are putting different answers, which is quite often the case in Reading C. So with Reading C, we really need to make sure that one, we follow the strategies, and two, we read quite carefully. But looking at the chat box, it looks like quite a lot of you have chosen B. So let's have a look. B is the correct answer. So let's have a look at why. So the breastfeeding debate compares the benefits of breast milk with those of formula milk. We can see at the beginning, we have information about the Start for Life website that outlines the benefits of breastfeeding, and the breastfeeding debate continues. So then we read more carefully and we can see that there is some discussion here and some evidence that supports this statement here, that there are benefits to breastfeeding. Then we notice this in contrast statement, but again, we have to read quite carefully to discover what is being contrasted here. So here, perhaps it is the claims that are being contrasted. However, we are also given benefits to formula milk as well. So we're given benefits of breastfeeding and benefits of formula milk here. So B is our correct answer. So let's have a look at why the other answers are not correct. So in A, highlights the benefits of breast milk over formula milk. So it's suggesting here that breast milk is preferable to formula milk, which we've discovered is not the case. We have benefits of breast milk and we also have benefits of formula milk, but not one over the other. C is not correct as we don't have any information. It's not mentioned as to reasons why women chose not to breastfeed. D, we're looking particularly for a concluding statement here, and we're not given a concluding statement that one is better than the other. We're given details on the benefits of each of them. So we can see that B is our correct answer here. So another type of question that you may get, that you will get in Reading C, is a lexical or vocabulary question. So a lexical or vocabulary questions are about vocabulary and context. So the words around the vocabulary item will help you understand the meaning of the word or words that you need to answer the question on. Now, vocabulary questions are on specific expressions, for example, idioms or collocations, so words that often go together. Lexical questions will often refer to reference words. So reference words are referred to use back, sometimes forward, but most commonly back in OET questions, to ideas or people or things which have already been mentioned. So writers use reference words to avoid repeating words or writing lengthy paragraphs. Some of the reference words you might see include it or this or these or they. So let's have a look at an example together. So we can see we have a question. In the fifth paragraph, this refers to. So we've got this, which is underlined in the text, and we have got our 4 options. And we need to do the same, we need to take the same approach. So we underline keywords in the question. So A, the addition of important nutrients to soy-based formula. Does this refer back to the addition of nutrients? Does this refer back to the position of physicians? So the position or the opinion or the view of physicians, so physicians or doctors, regarding formula milk? Does this refer to an advertising campaign that has been used to encourage formula? Or does this refer to the attitude towards formula milk after the 1940s? So in order to find our answer, we need to read the whole text, the whole paragraph, and we need to read quite carefully before and after to find out what is this replacing. Okay, so following that strategy, let's see what you think the answer is. So again, into the chat box, so you can label your answer with number 11. So we're looking at question number 11. So 11, and what do you think the answer is? A, B, C, or D? Okay, great. Okay, great. So our answers so far are fairly unanimous. So you have mostly put D for this one. So let's check to see if you are right. So let's have a look. Yes, so D, the attitude towards formula milk after the 1940s. So let's have a look at why. So we look here, we look just before the text, and we see that by the 1940s and 50s, so we can presume after the 1940s, physicians and consumers regarded the formula as a popular and safe substitute. So this is an attitude. The attitude is that the formula is popular and safe. This attitude is what caused an aggressive marketing of formulas in developing countries. So this is referring back to the attitude. So let's look at why the other answers are not correct. So A, we have addition of important nutrients. So we do have information about this, but it's not directly linked to this. The addition of nutrients is not what led to the marketing campaign, but it is information for us about the history of formula milk. The position of physicians regarding milk, formula milk, we can see here, and we've already discovered that it's physicians and consumers, not only physicians. So this is not the right answer. And then an advertising campaign to encourage formula. Marketing is a similar meaning to advertising campaign. So we would be repeating ourselves here if we use advertising campaign to replace this. Okay, so reading C. Some of the difficulties that you may come across with reading C is time pressure. You have to be very careful and organize your time well and not be tempted to read every text in detail and take a long time over it, as you may do if you're reading an article for continuous professional development. One of the other difficulties is complex language and unfamiliar vocabulary. So you need to have ways of dealing with unknown vocabulary and build up your vocabulary. Concentration. So reading B and C is 45 minutes. And reading is always the second paper. So you've had listening first, then you have reading. So you need to build up your concentration skills. Unfamiliar topics can sometimes be difficult, and identifying attitude and opinion. So you need to work on being aware of what phrases are used to show attitude and opinion. So you might have verbs like hinted, or you might have phrases like a common refrain, a common idea. So in order to be successful in reading C, you need to develop your reading skills. So OET practice papers are a very good way to do this. However, you also need to develop your reading skills and read more widely and as often as possible. So you should read articles containing opinions to help you identify attitude and opinion, and also choose unfamiliar topics and topics that perhaps you wouldn't usually read in order to become more familiar with different topics and also be able to deal with unknown topics and vocabulary. And here are some of the sites that we would recommend to help with your general reading skills. When you read articles, make sure that you notice any language of opinion and attitude. So start noticing when you're reading and being an active reader and noticing how the writers express opinions and how the writers express views, to make sure that you're familiar with how this is done or in longer, more academic text. So our top tips for reading C: make sure you read the questions carefully, underline keywords, and notice the differences between the options. Then read the paragraph more carefully before you choose an answer. Importantly, remembering that there are time pressures in reading C. If you get stuck, move on. So move on. Don't spend a really long time on one question. You've got 16 questions to answer. So if you get stuck, move on and then come back to it later, or you might find the answer while you're looking at another question. As part of your self-study, you need to read extensively. So make sure you read as often as possible, ideally every day, and you read the right kinds of texts for reading C. Okay, so time for questions. So if you have any questions, please pop them into the question and answer in Zoom. Okay, so we have a couple of questions. So someone is asking, in order to score a B, how many correct answers do you need out of 42? So OET advise that you should aim for around 70% or higher correct answers in order to have a good chance of getting a B. So aim for as many as possible, but the advice from OET is around 73%. How is reading C different from reading B? This is a good question. So reading C and B, there are several differences. So you have the question types. First of all, in reading B, it's 3-option multiple choice, whereas reading C is 4-option multiple choice. And then there are the text types. So in reading B, the text types are short and information heavy, and they are the kinds of texts that are used in the workplace, whereas reading C, the texts are longer, therefore you're using slightly different reading skills. It tests your ability to read longer texts and look for attitude and opinion. Okay. Okay, so we have a question here. Sometimes we can't focus on a paragraph while under time pressure? How can you find the right keywords? This is an interesting question. So the answer is you need to make sure that you train under time pressure. So make sure that as part of your self-study, you're really working on building up your reading speed, so your general reading speed, and your ability to answer the questions. And the keywords, just be careful of the keywords, because remember that in Reading C, it's not necessarily about finding keywords in the text, it's about understanding paragraphs or understanding ideas and opinions. But if you're looking at understanding the keywords in the question, so the keywords in the question, they're the keywords that will help you to find the answer and the keywords that show the differences. So for example, you may need to look for comparative words, like the one we saw today. We had a comparative word. So it was one option, one option for feeding babies was better than the other. So you're looking at those comparative words to help you. We have a question in the chat, which is, how can you identify the writer's opinion? This is a very good question. And we will be doing a session on this, which is coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we have a live lesson on how to identify the writer's opinion. As a brief answer today, identifying the writer's opinion, you need to look for words or phrases that show you opinion. So for example, we might have claim or hint, etc. But we'll be looking at that in more detail in one of our other sessions. Okay, so thank you very much for all of your questions. That's all we have time for today. So thank you for coming, everyone. It's been really great to have you here today. Again, don't forget to register for our next free live lesson, which will be on Listening C. We'll be looking at tips and strategies. You can find the link in the chat now to register for that one. Don't forget to tune in to our social media platforms. You can find the links in the chat as we're continuing with our live lessons, and you can find out more information about the topics that are coming up via our social media platforms. If you are at the start of your OET journey, if you're preparing for OET at the moment, we have some fantastic resources to help you and courses to help you prepare. So we have Reach OETB for nursing and for medicine. And this is an online course that will give you hints and tips on how to pass your OET, how to prepare for OET, and it also takes you through vocabulary and grammar structures that you need to be aware of in order to be successful in your OET. We also have an OET writing correction service. So if you want some feedback on your writing, we send you a set of case notes and then give you specific and detailed feedback on your letter. And we also have an OET practice test, which is a great resource if you are getting close to test day and want to practice applying those strategies and practice your timing. All the links are listed for you in the chat. And if you do have any other questions, please don't hesitate to contact us on inquiries at Specialist Language Courses, or go to our website, specialistlanguagescourses.com, and use the chat function there, and we will aim to answer your questions. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much for coming along today, and have a lovely day.